Hi, I'm Mike Hyder, President and CEO of the Executive Leadership Council. And today I am joined by Linnea Irvin, the CEO of Coqual. While you may know them by a different name, the Center for Talent Innovation, Coqual is a global, not-for-profit think tank that's dedicated to helping leaders design diverse, equitable, and inclusive workplaces where every person belongs. Their cutting-edge research and advisory services focuses on gender, race, ethnicity, disability, veteran status, and LGBTQ identities, as well as the intersections among these groups. All of this great work is done under Linnea's leadership. Linnea is a global business executive and thought leader in workplace diversity, equity, and inclusion. And she spent more than a decade at Bank of America Merrill Lynch, where she led strategic initiatives in global equities, managed client relationships, and led multinational teams. Since 2013, she has co-chaired the Human Rights Campaign Business Advisory Council. She sits on the board of directors for Outright Action International, an LGBTQ advocacy organization with a permanent presence at the UN. And in 2021, she was named to the Yahoo Finance Top 100 Outstanding LGBT plus executives list. Linnea, thank you so much for being here. It's so good to see you. Welcome.
Oh, it is a pleasure. Thank you for having me. So glad to see you as well.
I'm looking forward to the discussion too. I've been waiting on this for a while. So let's get it. Let's get at it, shall we?
We should. Let's do it.
Linnea, in the work that you and I have done around DE&I think it's fair to say that corporate America hasn't always gotten it right. But some progress has been made, although there's more work that needs to be done. When it comes to truly embracing LGBTQ plus employees, especially executives, what is corporate America still getting wrong?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. So yes, there's progress has been made, and that's why we do this work. When we think about what corporate America is getting wrong, I almost want to offer up a reframe, right? And not focus on the getting it wrong bit, because there is a tremendous amount of fear around getting it wrong. We've all experienced it, fear of getting it wrong as it relates to race and discussions around race and racism in the workplace, fear of getting gender pronouns wrong, things of that nature. And it's this overwhelming fear that can lead to inertia and a lack of action. So I'm going to offer up a reframe. As you know, we're both of us are really passionate about ultimately driving more equitable outcomes in the work environment. And so I will say where corporate America could be better would be, in thinking about, LGBTQ executives, other leaders who are underrepresented, ultimately just placing this greater focus on ways to create conditions for people to thrive, right? Thinking about where the organization could be better equipped at attracting, developing, advancing LGBTQ leaders and other talent. And we're talking about equity here. Ultimately, it's about ensuring folks have what they need to meet their potential. It's about opportunity, about access, about resources. And I think the organizations who are committed to being better, they're the ones who are dismantling the talent lifecycle end to end. They're looking at talent acquisition. They're looking at performance evaluations. They're looking at, pay inequity, and really potentially breaking and or tearing down legacy or existing processes so that you can build a better work environment. And ultimately, you lean into equity, it benefits everyone. And then again, even specifically to the LGBT community, but not only, I think the companies that are aiming at being better are promoting allyship, right? This is across lines of difference. And so not only promoting it, but ensuring teams actually have the education and the tools that we ultimately need to engage one another in a way that's thoughtful, open, productive. And so I think to the extent that we're aware of the need for us to be allies with one another, and companies can ensure that folks are equipped with the tools so that they can make a conscious effort, will benefit, right? This is ultimately, if we can overcome the fear of getting it wrong, right, then we can overcome the thought that you have to know each and everything about, everyone across lines of difference and their experiences, and that's not the case. It's about just having this willingness to intervene when we see something in the work environment that's unproductive to positive work culture, being willing to lend our access and privilege to amplify the contributions of others, amplify the experiences of other people. And so I would say the organizations who are looking to get it right, if they deploy a bit of that, they'll ultimately get there.
Yeah. Linnea, one of many things that I so appreciate about you is your orientation towards focusing on the positive of what's possible. I just want to honor that. I mean, I really appreciate that about your sort of approach, and especially as it relates to this particular topic. That was just very well stated, what you said. And then when you think about, given that America and the rest of the world has made strides around equality. Some might claim that in 2022, a Pride Month perhaps wouldn't be as necessary as it once was. Mm. But as a thought leader in the LGBTQ plus community, Linnea, why do you think Pride is still relevant for us today?
I mean, I think Pride maintains relevance to celebrate the progress that the strides that you're speaking to. Mm-hmm. But to be honest, we have a lot of work to do, right? I think that, those gains, we want to see them experienced by a broader part of the community, both domestically and globally. I'll be honest with you, especially this year, because we've had a really busy June. Mm-hmm. But I'll think back to 2020. That summer, I felt like for the first time, conversations about race and inequity within the LGBT community actually came to the surface, mm-hmm. right? So we now have Juneteenth being recognized as a federal holiday in the month of June. And so for the past 2 years, there's been some real conversation around Black lives during Pride Month, right? And it's really offered up some space for visibility and amplification of, Black art, enterprise, and our contributions to the LGBTQ movement and society more broadly, that I think were timely and very much necessary, because, historically, we corporate stakeholders have been, champions of LGBTQ equality, of course, but the movement, there'd been this focus on parades and festivals and, marriage equality as the end all be all. And I'll be honest, much of the activist efforts, not mine, but others, and the corporate dollars, it just excluded so many members of the communities of color, transgender folks. And, for a long time, it really just felt like the strides that have been made just were seemingly less concerned with real challenges facing the community, like high rates of employment, high rates of unemployment, equitable access to healthcare, access to fair housing. And so we'd have these heroes, mm-hmm. these histories being celebrated that until recently did leave out the Black and brown people who were foundational to the resistance that propelled Pride 50 years ago. And so I think there's plenty of work to do domestically, and then globally, when we look at LGBTQ equality, it's still criminalized in over 70 countries. And over a dozen of them, we're talking death penalty. So we have to continue to create some space for dialogue to ensure that we have progress towards safety, basic human dignity, and some of those global jurisdictions that many of us touch in our professional lives. So,
yeah, intersectionality, and thank you. You just teed up this other question I wanted to ask you. Intersectionality is, as you referenced, is central, or at least should be, to these discussions. As we know, those in the LGBTQ community aren't monolithic. Just like those in the Black community aren't, But given your experience, Linnea, as an openly queer Black woman in corporate America, how do you believe companies can better show up for their employees and executives alike when it comes to supporting those who identify with both communities?
Right. Well, look, I mean, it's so yes, I have kind of multiple intersecting identities. I'm an out queer leader, but as ELC community leaders are aware, many of us know what it feels like to be the only Black person in a room, the only Black female in a room, right? And it shapes our interactions, and no doubt, dictates the way that we are treated, and in certain environments. And so at Cokewool, at our think tank, we just think it's absolutely critical to look at our data at the intersections of diversity, right? That's how we really uncover not only bias, but unique barriers that might be impacting the career experiences of talent across lines of difference. Let me just, to bring it to life.
Mm-hmm.
So our equity, our most recent equity study, there are quite a few insights that come out, and we look at both structural interpersonal barriers that impact one's career. But when you think about performance evaluations, for example, right? That's most opportunities stem from those evaluations, whether or not we're promoted, how we're paid, all of that. Black men are twice as likely, right, to say they're evaluated by different criteria altogether, right, than their peers. We looked at advancement and those being slow to promotion, kind of just promotion rates. Black women are 4 times more likely to feel passed over in favor of equally and or less qualified colleagues, right? Let's not even think about pay inequity. Black women are acutely aware of that as well. So you think about these things at the intersection of race and or gender. But then we also know, from our research, that LGBTQ employees are more likely to feel out of place, lonely, anxious at work. And then in the data, we see that those feelings are amplified, again, compounded at the intersections of race and gender. So, as a Black leader, of course, I'm going to walk into some rooms, be discounted, have my credibility questioned. And perhaps as a queer, professional, I might have a different set of headwinds that face me, depending on my dress or performance or things of that nature. But when you think about it, and we think about other, underrepresented cohorts that are likely bringing multiple identities into the work environment, it just increases opportunity for bias and feelings of exclusion, right? And so that's the reason why companies kind of have to demonstrate some awareness of the intersectional realities that could be causing real inequity to just compound for groups as they advance in their careers. And we've seen it, microaggressions and kind of the experiences of these things, they actually increase as you head into executive levels and C-suite. So we're not immune to it either, even after folks have made meaningful gains in their careers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's such an important topic for one, for all of us to be just more conscious of. And so I really appreciate your perspective on that. And headwinds is something, right? I mean, headwinds is, and the more we can give people opportunity to recognize that the headwinds might be in the environment, mm-hmm. independent, especially if you include those multiple identities as a source of it, then we're all going to be better off being consciously sort of deliberate about, reducing them and turning them into tailwinds. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate you going there with me. But Linnea, I want to switch gears for a second about the amazing work that Cokewool is doing. The ELC, in the spirit of transparency, as you know, is a proud sponsor of Cokewool's latest research endeavor that will launch next month, titled Being Black in the UK, a new study that surveys the challenges around racial equity and inclusion that Black British professionals face in the workplace. Linnea, can you give us a glimpse of what we can expect to see from the findings of this research?
Well, look, I mean, we're excited about this study. It launches in just over 2 weeks, and obviously, we're thrilled to be collaborating with ELC on this work, just as we did for the Being Black in Corporate America study.
Yeah.
So that's been a thrill. It's interesting because we embarked on this study as a follow-up to the Being Black in Corporate America research, because we had many kind of company leaders who felt it would be valuable to embark on a similar endeavor in the UK, to see where there is nuance and there is kind of difference. And it's interesting, in the when we look at the headwinds that Black professionals face, or what we find coming up in the data, well, it's clear that the myth of meritocracy is still alive and well, very much so. And, we do see similar headwinds, as it relates to, advancement retention, as we might have seen in the US. But we definitely, and where there are similarities, again, I'm doing this without giving you the data. Yeah. There's definitely some nuance, and we do bring forth, some of that experience as it relates to, kind of African community in Britain, the Caribbean community in history in Britain, mixed race folks in the region, because that's also a kind of a meaningful cohort. Mm-hmm. And obviously, we looked into the state of conversation around race in the region, right, on the back of 2020, and what that potentially opened up in way of conversation across the pond. And, ultimately, I think the goal, it is one of those things where there are few surprises. Obviously, the team is kind of crossing T's, dotting I's on the final fact check, and it is under embargo. So we'll have to wait until it's launched publicly, but you're going to be joining us at the launch, so you'll be a part of the conversation we have the day that it's launched and goes live. But what we do hope is that this actually does continue a conversation for some of our large multinationals who, want to look at how the conversation may be similar and or different, right, in the market. And, we ultimately want to do what we do best, which is we leverage data to tell a story. And so we're telling a story of Black talent and executives, so that corporate spaces will be better equipped to ensure that we're able to advance at a rate that aligns at least our ambitions. So it's exciting. We're excited, and glad to have ELC along on this ride.
Well, I appreciate that. You referenced the word launch a couple of times, which means wait until the launch to get all of the detail. And I was going to ask you this question, even in the face of the embargo that you referenced, and if you can't answer it, I understand, but was there anything thematically in the research that you found perhaps even like alarming? I mean,
I won't say alarming, I'll be honest, because in some cases you'll find some things that were like, it maybe confirms what we suspected, and maybe offers some, it kind of illuminates some, from a context standpoint as it relates to history. I will say though, and I guess it's just my reframe always, but I definitely did find something hopeful in the study, and that the conversations or kind of comfort with conversations around race, seem to be a bit higher than what we saw in the US. And that may be because of the awakening that we've seen over the past 2 years, right? The past 3 years. And so obviously we're doing this work at a point in time. We embarked on the study, obviously, for Black talent in the US in 2019, as you know. So I think that's one thing that's hopeful. Now, the substance and nature of those conversations and the tools with which folks are entering into them, okay, that is a discussion. But I'm actually hopeful by what we saw, kind of the rate of at least willingness in the recent past to have conversations around race that may have been different for that region than we might have expected a few years ago.
And I'm really glad that you at COCO, you all have taken that on. Linnea, I have been and remain such a huge fan of you and your work, as well as COCO, and the work. And, as I wrap up, because this was our last question that I really wanted to make sure we landed on as an opportunity for you, given your voice in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. Freedom, acceptance, individuality, and the recognition of one's humanity have been central themes in our discussion today. But with Independence Day, Linnea, right around the corner, okay, what would you say sets America apart when it comes to these themes? And what makes you, Linnea Irvin, optimistic about our nation's future as it relates to equality?
Well, you know what? I do believe to some extent this country is a place where we can push forward and pursue change in our own lives, right? Our economic lives, our personal lives, and the lives of others. I think that we do have the freedom in some cases to act. And when we talk about allyship, I'm talking about in solidarity with one another. And I think when we think about Independence Day, I think that that's a freedom that we benefit from, and maybe there are other countries that don't have that. But I will be honest. The recent Supreme Court action, overturning 50 years of precedent, it does put some of those freedoms into question. And I will say, because I do believe we live in a country where if we're loud enough, right? Where if we activate our voices, our agency in support of greater equality for everyone, greater access to opportunity for everyone, ultimately, Black people, queer people, women, we are extraordinarily resilient people collectively.
Yeah.
Will be better off. And I think that when we head into this long weekend, we have to, of course, come together with our loved ones and the people we hold dear. But I really do hope people are activated in, what space they can take up in ensuring that, our rights to, to live with dignity and provide for our families, aren't secondary, right? Those are primary to our goals. And so, look, I live in optimism because that's the way we survive. I live in activism because that's the way we thrive. So I'm glad that we're here in conversation. That was a great last question. Yes, it's always good chatting with you, Mike.
Yeah, well, I'm telling you, it was an awesome word. And I can't thank you enough, not only for your time, but for your commitment in the struggle and your optimism. It's encouraging. It's a light, and I'm glad that our audience has the privilege and honor and opportunity to hear from you directly. And I look forward to seeing you at the launch on July 13th. But thank you for your contribution here, Linnea. It's been great.
It's been a pleasure. Have a lovely, lovely afternoon.
Take care.
Bye.